our brothers and sisters, our fellow Americans, not only exercising their constitutional, but their God-given right to share their life and their perspective, and to call in this moment for this country to pivot, for this country to do better, not for some Americans, but for all Americans. I felt a little cooped up today, so I went outside. I joined organizers on the streets of our city just outside here in City Hall. I know I'm the mayor, so I know some people would be happy to see me, and others might be upset at this moment and need to yell at me. And both of those things happened. That's part of what you do as a leader. You step forward to hear people's pain, to try to understand it and never dismiss it, and to try to offer more than a voice forward, but steps forward. To understand that peace isn't just built as a request, but it is earned when we embrace the idea of justice. Look, most of these briefings that you listen, and I don't know how long television stations will carry me tonight. They usually have a fire chief and a police chief and a city manager and city council members and mayors. They usually update you on what's happening in the city, and I think that's important, but you're getting that news every hour. I wish some of it were more the stories of everyday Angelenos marching who want to share what it means to have faced racism in their lives, and their allies who say this isn't just the work of Black Americans, but of white and Asian and Native and Latino Americans too. I wish we could hear those stories more. And so tonight I want to do something a little bit different. I want to talk from my heart to and about Black Angelenos and Americans. Because at the end of the day, this moment is first and foremost about whether we make a decision collectively, not just to answer the snuffing out of a life, the lynching of a man in Minneapolis, and the collective death that we have seen pile on and pile on and pile on until people wonder what Black lives mean, what Black bodies, whether they are valued. But to go deeper, to understand that this is a moment of opportunity and of hope and of change. I left the protests in the street after taking a knee, after praying, and after addressing the crowd. And I joined Reverend K.W. Tullis, who's the president of the Baptist Ministers Conference, my old friends, Pastor William Smart, Bishop Juan Carlos Mendez, and Pastor Michael Fisher Jr., who's here with me tonight, and many others. And before anybody who's friends with them say anything to them, they gave me a good, hard time. They were demanding about justice as everyone in America should be right now. And like so many others who were peacefully protesting, we need to hear those voices. And I want to lift one of those up tonight, and I would just ask, cut away when I come back if you need to, but I would ask our television stations to give the voice on the evening news to a young Black male Angeleno. Because at the end of the day, this story is about the pain that people carry the day that they are born from the traumas visited on their ancestors. And from the first moment, they're taller than a cute little boy, the way they're looked at in our society. And I'm gonna ask a young man of faith and of inspiration who I met today, Davian Pilgrim, a 16-year-old student from Morningside High School, who told me his story, and I want you to hear his story, to talk about what this moment and this movement means. So Davian, thank you so much for being with us. This microphone in this city is yours.
Hi, my name is Davian Pilgrim, and I am 16 years old. First, I want to say thank you to Mayor Garcetti for giving me this opportunity to speak today, because I have a story to share. I was recently stopped by the police officers and racially and criminally profiled. I was accused of being associated with the gang. I thought that really hurt, because that's not me. I am a God-fearing young Black man. I am an athlete. I'm a president of the youth department at Greater Zion Church in Compton under the leadership of Dr. Michael J.T. Fisher. I love God. That's why I believe in a change and I have hope. The opportunities with the people of faith and have a conversation with the mayor today was hopeful. We want to make sure that what happens to George Floyd does not ever happen again to someone that just looks like me. Losing our lives to the police officers is one of the biggest fears that we have in South LA. I have 7 brothers and sisters, and I for surely don't want none of that to happen to them. This is a hard moment, but the good news is that there is still time for unity. And while I think we should keep protesting and demanding change, there is no need to loot and tear up things down. It is time for us to rebuild. Conversations are what we need. We need to talk to each other. We need to understand each other. The police needs to understand where we are coming from. It is my prayer, my deep prayer, that we come together in unity and we take a stand together in a time like this. We need to hold our officers accountable, and we must stay strong for change and for peace. Thank you. Amen.
Thank you, Davian. Thank you for the courage of this moment and for the courage of your generation. Justice is never given, it is earned. It is earned by the chapters we see written on the streets of our country, sometimes with people's bodies, and always with the courage that they have to move us forward. So here's the uncomfortable part tonight. It falls on leaders not to just say the right things, but to do the right things. After I left that meeting across the street with the leaders from Baptist community and the faith community, I came back and I listened to folks on my own team. I listened to a powerful young black man who said that it's tough to even work in government right now. Another member of my team who said every single time, even though he works for the mayor and carries a mayor's badge, when somebody rolls up behind him from law enforcement, it makes him shudder. And he's worried about whether reaching for that badge to reassure them might scare them more than just sitting there until he can explain who he is. I heard from April, who is doing the most amazing work housing Angelenos who are unhoused, and who's dealing with the pain of this moment by taking things to folks who are living in our shelters that we've set up. So she brought shoes to them, and all she could think about in her mind was, with a car full of shoes, will they think that I'm a looter? I want non-black Angelenos to hear those stories and to have those conversations. Have them in your workplace and in your neighborhood. Have them in your church and wherever you are. If we don't acknowledge that a black woman is 4 times more likely to die because she wants to bring a child into this world than a white woman, then we can't see that. If we don't see that if you're a black man in Los Angeles, you're 10 times more likely to be homeless than if you're a white man, we can't see that. And while not every death is as visible and as vicious as George Floyd's, we have to own those deaths that come from the diabetes and that come from COVID-19 and all of the things that visit black Americans disproportionately because of where they start life and where this society values their life. The schools that they are born into, in the neighborhoods where they live, that have been discarded, and efforts to fund those schools rejected. The moments in which we see that racial justice can't be the work of 10% of a nation, it has to be the work of 100% of the nation. So to my fellow Angelenos, to my African American brothers and sisters who live in this city, I want to say, I hear you. And I hear that this isn't just about the criminal justice system. This is about also our society and where we put our resources. When we've done things like raise the minimum wage, and that disproportionately hits women and African Americans, we have to see those as important bricks in building this new house. When we do things like making community college free, that contributes to what we see with justice. But we also have from our budget, which is a moral document, which needs to keep people safe and protected. But the best way for people to be safe and protected, and I hear you on the street loud and clear, is not just by throwing dollars always into police departments, but also into youth programs and into educational opportunities and into trauma-based recovery for people who carry trauma. I don't have announcements tonight, but I want you to know that I've been having these conversations for the last 2 or 3 days. I'm having them with my fellow elected officials. I'm having them with community leaders. I'm having them with young people who are demanding that I and we collectively do better. That just as after the trauma of 1992, we emerged forward with saying, never again to things like legalized chokeholds, which killed black men in this city. Never again to no independent investigations when there's acts of police brutality. And never again to many things. We must ask, what are the never again moments today? And I look forward in the next day or two, and with mayors across the country who I've been having this conversation with, to make sure that we build from this moment, that we hear from this moment, that we fund from this moment, that we look at the prism of race in America as one of the greatest sins that we have had and one that stays with us, and that we can only get past when we all get past that together. That's my simple pledge to you tonight. As we look at what has been a safer day and a more beautiful day, I look forward to the day when we get rid of a curfew, when we don't have National Guard, when our police officers don't have their helmets on. And I want to make sure we can see the difference between people who are looting, and we will go after folks who break into businesses. We will go after people who are looting, or worse, causing violence against demonstrators or to peace officers. But let's put that here and not let that dominate what this moment and this movement is about. Because if we let that be the only image, if we let that be the only story, we are missing our opportunity, and this isn't going to go away soon. It will only go away when there is the trust that we are taking the actions to build a summer of peace this summer in Los Angeles and across the country, with jobs for young people, with peaceful places to be, with the mental health care that we need to deal with what that feels like day after day after day, to be a young black man who doesn't know why people don't trust him, look at him that way, feel that way every moment they inhabit a body. Somebody powerfully said to me today, I'm an ally, but at the end of the day, I can turn off my phone, I can stop looking at Twitter, I can watch some TV. But for my black brothers and sisters, they can't turn that off. They can't stop being black. They can't stop being seen by the racism that still pervades our country. There is so much work for us to do, and I am so proud of this city. I know that there's those who just want to focus on the law and order, and I know it is my responsibility to throw everything I have into peace, restoration, and building in this city. But that doesn't just happen from peace officers. That happens from our investments in communities and in neighborhoods. Whether or not we say to folks who have been involved in the criminal justice system, instead of, you're done with your time, but there's no help, here's a job and here's a way forward. For us to look at what our fight with COVID-19 now is about. And please, 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 everybody who's been out there protesting so beautifully around Los Angeles, make sure you get tested and make sure you're maintaining your physical distance, that you're washing your hands and wearing a mask. Imagine if these days lead to a spread that leads to things getting worse and more people dying. Please go to coronavirus.lacity.org/testing and get a test. Not only did we have Dodger Stadium open, we're reopening the Crenshaw Christian Center site, 3 or 4 sites that can do thousands and thousands of tests to meet the capacity that we need, because we have to defeat that threat to us all, which does discriminate disproportionately against communities of color. Let me just take a breath to say, we aren't where we once were, but we aren't where we need to be. We're maybe stuck somewhere in the middle of the mountain in this nation and this city's history. If you're young, all you can see is up and how far we have to go to reach the peak, and you should be unyielding and demanding that we keep climbing. And for some of us who have been around, who have seen the changes, who have worked hard to bring about things like implicit bias training and de-escalation in our police force, or to look at the ways that summer night lights and our gang reduction youth development programs came out of demands from the community to say parks need to be places of peace for the summer and for our children. That helped us get up the mountain, and we can look down and see how far we've come. We have two choices, Los Angeles: either hopelessness, that this is a moment that can't be fixed, that America is so broken that we can't repair our hearts, and we can't repair our streets, and we can't bring peace to our lives. Or we have hope, the only thing that has ever guided this country, our city, and our world. We all know, or many of us know, the Negro National Anthem. And I want to quote from it. In the first verse, it ends, "Sing us a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. And facing the rising sun of our new day begun, let us march on till victory is won. Tomorrow the sun will rise above Los Angeles. Tomorrow we have a choice to make. I have a choice to make. And I choose to listen and to move forward, to bring this city together, to build peace on our streets and in our neighborhoods, and to admit the country that we live in, that we love and that we want to see do better. George Floyd died in our America so that we may make sense of our future, to make sure that we never see that again, and that we do the work to carry the promise of this country and of our City of Angels forward. I celebrate you on the streets. If you're breaking the law, we will not let you change the message. And tomorrow, when a new sun comes, I hope that everybody in Los Angeles will embrace the work that we have to do together. Hopelessness is not our option. We only have hope, and we only have each other. With that, I'll be happy to answer questions.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Steve Gregory with KFI Radio on behalf of the LA Press Corps. Our first question comes from Cindy Chang at the LA Times. Mr. Mayor, do you still have confidence in Michael Moore after his remark about looters being as responsible for George Floyd's death as the police officers? Also, what are your thoughts about the remark? Moore seemed to walk it back, but then he spoke deliberately rather than making an off-the-cuff mistake. Also, what's your view of the tactics used by the police to contain the protests, including rubber bullets and batons?
Absolutely. Let me start with the second. I think that we've seen less of any of those tactics, and I hope that we can see the most minimal, if not zero, of those tactics. I know what it's like to see on those lines, to have police officers who've had their skulls fractured, who have maintained their resolve and their restraint. So those tactics will sometimes be out there, but it is my direction to minimize those, and if we can, to not use those at all, especially if there's peaceful protesters. And I know for folks who are sometimes in the front, they don't know that something just happened in the back where bottles or bricks were just thrown. But we have to figure out a way to make sure that peaceful protesting anywhere in Los Angeles does not meet that. Second, in terms of Chief Moore, I've known this man's heart for decades. He was the person brought in after the Rampart scandal to clean up that station as a captain. When I heard him say what he said, I knew that he did not mean that, and I know that he corrected it right away. It is not the moral equivalent, and it does not reflect certainly my thinking. That statement is a wrong statement, that looters are the equivalent of murderers. Looting is wrong, but they are not the moral equivalents. The officers who killed George Floyd are murderers. I'm glad he quickly corrected it, and I'm glad that he further apologized as well. I also do believe that some folks who went out there and said he said protesters, he never said protesters were, even when he misspoke. And I want to be very, very clear about that. If I believed for a moment that the chief believed that in his heart, he would no longer be our chief of police. I can't say that any stronger. Next question, please.
The next question comes from Robert Kovacic at KNBC Television. Mr. Mayor, you're considered by many to be one of the most progressive mayors in LA's history. And now hundreds show up outside your home to protest. We know you encourage the right to express their thoughts, but do you think these individuals have the wrong impression of you?
Oh, I'd never worry about people's impressions. I can only share my heart. I've shared my heart tonight, and I want people to know that I hear them. I hear them loud and clear. I've devoted my life to an incredibly difficult pathway professionally. There are a lot easier jobs than being mayor of Los Angeles. But the things that I love most in this city, my family and Los Angeles, are both here in the City of Angels. And I'm never going to give up on either one. I'm never going to give up on the opportunities of my daughter to grow up in a better city, in a better world than the one I inherited, and that Daddy has an active role to play in building that. And I'm never going to give up on the voices that aren't at the table, that aren't heard. It's what fuels me. Look, some people, when you become a public official, lift you up and make you into something much nicer and better than you are, and others tear you down. And in both cases, they probably don't know you very well. But I've come to accept this is about the work that we do, not the feelings that we have. And I'm proud of the protesters across the city who are peacefully expressing themselves. You don't sign up for a job like mayor if you aren't willing to not only take the heat, but to hear the voices. And I never let loud or angry or upset voices cloud me from hearing the words. And I never will stop that engagement like we had here today, whether it's on the streets here, what we saw in the Valley, the West Side, anywhere. So I embrace our right to do that. And I'm glad that it has been peaceful. And separate from those folks are people who are breaking the law, who are in a separate category. That might even happen on days where there aren't protests. Let's not confuse those, but let's make sure people aren't exploiting this righteous moment for their further ends. Next question, thanks.
Next question comes from Claudia Pescuta from KNX 1070 News Radio. She asks, you're calling for change, but protesters say that change should start with the budget, taking money away from cops and putting it into housing and services. Also, curfew is entering its fourth night, pretty much as long as it was during the '92 riots. The ACLU says curfew is illegally broad. It's stopping peaceful protests and putting all residents under house arrests. Your comments?
Look, I'm glad that we are able to, all day long, have protests in a peaceful and safe way. I will come back to this because of those of us who were here in 1992 or remember 1992. At this point in the unrest of the city then, 55 people were dead. I need to protect all Angelenos. I need to protect protesters. I need to protect our peace officers. And we saw dangerous, dangerous situations that almost resulted in death. And I won't let that happen. We're not unique in Los Angeles, and I appreciate what people are saying, and I hope they heard. I can't wait till the day when the curfew is gone too, and I hope that is sooner than later. But we see this in every city. I talked to a dozen mayors over the weekend and asked them how many were looking at a curfew. At the time, 2 were. Now all 12 have that. But it's also the responsibility, I think, at the national level for there to be some leadership to bring this moment to a calmer place. Local governments are important. It's where law enforcement is. It's where some of these resources are. But in Washington, it's where the bulk of our resources are. And the political pyromania that we see coming out of Washington right now is not only bringing us together, it is fanning the fuel of this fire. George W. Bush wrote a letter today aimed at healing. I am not in the same political party as him, but as 2 fellow Americans, and the words that we've seen from President Obama and others, this is a moment for every American leader to step up and to heal. And so that is the most critical thing that we can do moving forward, is to find common ground that this death has presented us with and to make forward motion. In terms of the budget, absolutely, I alluded to that here. I'm proud that we have grown our youth development and gang reduction by 50% while the numbers of officers while I've been mayor have stayed the same. I'm glad that we've been able to do things like LA Rise, which hires people coming out of jail and prison in jobs with the city and with our Caltrans and other places to give them hope and opportunity instead of a one-way ticket back to jail. I'm proud of the more than $600 million, the biggest growth of our budget, that we're putting into the fight to help people who are experiencing homelessness. But I hear what people are saying out there. And that's why I'm talking to my fellow elected officials and the city council and others. Even in a year when we see revenues down, I hear you. In the next couple of days, I hope to be able to show how we can build more justice, how we can invest in youth and in jobs, how we can make sure that there is less pain, whether it comes from being hungry right now or whether it comes from being the victim of racism. We have to make sure that those things are reflected in our dollars. And I think this moment does call for us to continue marching forward and finding opportunities wherever we can. So I hope in the next couple of days to share more of that.
Next question comes from Benjamin Oreskes from the LA Times. Mr. Mayor, can you tell us how many guardsmen and women have been deployed in Los Angeles tonight? Also, where are they staying?
So we have, I'm not going to, with respect to the guardsmen and women, I'm going to let where they stay overnight, where they sleep, be their business. But we have 1,000 National Guardsmen and women on the streets of Los Angeles. They're all over, but one place I said they would not go to is South Los Angeles. I think that was the wrong move. We haven't seen any looting going on there. There is no need. And the wrong mistake would have been to say, okay, here we go, there's National Guards, let's go to places where people are black and brown because that's where it's going to happen. We've seen the opposite. So they are in the places where we saw either buildings that were already broken into that need to be secured so they can stand there to protect our small business owners from losing everything, or in neighborhoods where there is the threat of that. But they're deployed from West LA to Central Los Angeles, here downtown, and I believe there's some in the Valley tonight as well.
We have a follow-up question from Robert Kovacic at KNBC Television. Mayor, New York has extended their curfew for the entire week. Are you considering that for Los Angeles?
No, for me it's day to day because, as I said, my hope in my heart is that as soon as we don't need that curfew, we can get rid of it. But I can't predict what the future holds. We're seeing better days each day. And thank you to the leaders who have made sure, when I was talking with some of the pastors today, said most of our people are out there on the street protesting. But we know also probably some of the folks who are out there doing things that are wrong, and we can get to them. And I hope to be able to work with our church leaders, our moral leaders, our parents and others to say, don't do this. Don't make a mistake. Help us help you. This is not about one night and grabbing some sneakers. This is something that can hurt you for days and years to come. And I think that message is getting out there. We saw some quick looting that happened in Hollywood where we have thousands of people peacefully protesting. That was dealt with quickly, so we're getting good response, but I don't want to see us having to do that anywhere. We will, make no mistake. That is what we have to do. But thank you to the leadership, and I saw that among leaders, by the way, in marches too, and I want to thank those people who stepped before those who weren't looters, but maybe who wanted to commit acts of violence. Because the moment acts of violence start coming at our peace officers, we know how that story ends. We know what happens on the street. We know that lives can be in danger in both directions. And some who would play with the lives of protesters who are peaceful or peace officers who are trying to do their job, we know that they are threats too. And so thank you for exercising that leadership while we do the same.
Next question comes from Oswaldo Ruiz from KMEX Television, Channel 34, Univision. He asks, Mr. Mayor, how can you guarantee the safety for everyone in LA?
There's no day in which I can guarantee 100% the safety for everybody, but that is always my goal. I wish we had no crime ever in Los Angeles. And that doesn't come just from policing. It comes from a police department that has to get better every single day and does a heroic job of recruiting people who come from the community, of treating people with respect and demanding that they treat others with respect. And I'm proud of all of the work Los Angeles has done, even as we have more to do. But we can't guarantee ever 100%. I look forward to a day when there is no crime. But in the meantime, that is the goal. We will protect communities, we will protect people, but we understand that comes from investing in communities too. Where there is hopelessness, there is violence. It's not often committed always against other people. This is things that visit communities when we assign and look the other way, and we see violence within a community that is low income. That is on all of us. And to my earlier points, if we don't see that as our work, just the work of them, we will never do the necessary work to bring justice about here in our city and in our country.
Next question comes from me, and I wanted to ask you, there are some critics and business owners I spoke with in the Fairfax district that felt like the city was slow to react to prevent looting or to get to it quicker. I'm just wondering if you think the LAPD's response is appropriate, and also, do you have control over where the Guard is deployed throughout the city?
So on the second one, yes, of course, the Guard meets with our police command staff. They determine the areas that are in need of securing so that police officers who are trained in policing can do that, and the Guard, which is not trained in policing, can have those static posts to protect those areas. We do that every single day. In terms of what a business owner in the Fairfax district may feel, my heart breaks for you, and I don't say that you're wrong. I know what that feels like to lose everything. I know that that is devastating at a moment you felt like you could stand up. But I'm not going to second guess the tactics. A lot of people watch this on TV and they're like, there's 2 people on TV, why can't LAPD get them? I'm not going to lose lives. We're not going to have police officers told to do things they're not trained to that can result in individuals losing their lives or them because everybody says chase everybody down. I'm glad that we've learned lessons, have people that looting is decreasing and that it's being dealt with pretty swiftly. But anybody who sees roving bands of folks who can go out, quickly go around, in and out of cars, this is immensely difficult work. And I want to thank the police officers who were actually out there on their line with their bodies and the folks that were out there making sure that we could protect as many businesses as we did. But if you've lost your business, that's, I know, not much of a salve. All I can say is that we were there the next morning to clean up. We've offered to waive all fees and to help do the cleanup for you. We're going to be putting loans and grants, more importantly, together to help these businesses stand up, because that's my responsibility, whether it's there or in Van Nuys or in Hollywood, it's what we have to do. But there's no place in America that's figured out a way to, quote unquote, stop 100% of the looting. Cities are big places. People can move swiftly. People can split up. So if there's a city that has managed to have 0 looting once you have enough people, we will look at that model. And to those businesses that were hit, I'm so sorry. And I'm here to work to make sure that you can stand up and that your employees can come back to work.
And if you don't mind, next question to Davian.
Yeah, please. I was hoping you had a question, Phil.
Well, he spoke so eloquently. I wanted you to please step to the microphone. Would you do us a favor, please, and spell your name for us?
Davion Pilgrim.
And you can look at the camera. Then, if you don't mind, you gave us a prepared statement about you and some experiences you've had. Can you talk a little bit about how you're feeling when you see the images on television about how things are being done in the community? Do you support what's going on? Do you have issues with what's going on? What's your overall message?
I support it and I don't support it. There's some things I do support, like protesting. Of course, we must be heard. There's never not a day that you should speak go and not be unspoken. There's days where, anybody could say something, but how far would you take to act and actually do it is a question we should ask a lot of these protesters. It's easy to loot, it's easy to break stuff, it's easy to bring everybody down, it's easy to bring down these politics and all that. But what can we do to change? With me over this whole protesting, it's okay and all, but we got to take a change and we got to do something for the better and not for the worse. Looting is gonna get us in trouble more than it changing. We can't do nothing, but we could do something. We could speak up and we could go through the right steps and the right ways to change this community and what goes on.
You're barely old enough to have a driver's license. Do you suppose by the time that your children have a driver's license that maybe racism will be gone and all of this will be something of the past?
I pray that heavy. I pray that my kids will be set to go to college. I pray that they will be able to grow something. I will pray that they get to see 16, 18, 21. I'll pray that they get to live in the biggest house that they ever want to and fulfill any dreams that they want to.
What do you want to be when you grow up?
I want to be a lawyer. I want to be the mayor. I want to make a change. If that's to start with me saying something on this camera right now, then that's what I'm going to have to do.
Thank you, young man. Mr.
Thank
Mayor,
you.
that concludes the questions in English.
I always feel a deep sense of responsibility to speak also in Spanish in our multilingual city. I wish that could be the last word, though, because that's the voice that I'm trying to give and that I will continue to give. Thank you so much for being here. And I'm going to switch over to Spanish. To everybody else who's tuning in or tuning out now, let me thank you for today, for the peace and the protest, the work we're doing to ensure there is no violence. Whether you're out there on the line working as a city employee, a peace officer, an organizer of one of these marches, thank you for keeping the peace. And let's all promote that peace. And more on that in the next day or two. So let me turn to Spanish. Muy buenas tardes a Los Ángeles. Hoy tuvimos la bendición de ver protestas por toda la ciudad. Yo salí y me uní a una. Y estuve agradecido de estar allí. Yo sé que hay personas quienes quieren que las protestas se acaben, pero deben sentir orgullo. No se sienten incómodos.